Dr. Mary Talley Bowden and Dr. Bruce Dooley. It's high time, I know that you two know each other off air, but it's high time that people across the world saw two of, I think, in my opinion, but a journalist's opinion as well, two of the most ethical world doctors that we have, and people whose voices deserve to be listened to, not only by those who believed in the jabs and what's gone on in the last 5 years, but also primarily by those who still believe that what is happening is acceptable. We need to expose what's been going on here. So I'd like you each to introduce your own backgrounds in coming to this interview, which is going to focus on the Federation of State Medical Boards. I'll begin with you, Bruce, because you, like me, live in New Zealand. And 4 years ago, we exposed the Federation of State Medical Boards because you had had some experience going to a meeting of theirs when you were a younger doctor growing up and living and practicing in America. Could you tell us briefly your story with the FSMB?
Sure. I was actually on the board of directors in the mid-90s of the largest in history, the largest group of physicians, sorry about the plane, in the world. It was called ACAM, American College for the Advancement of Medicine. And it was there on the board that I began to see that there was something happening in the background that was an attack on us through the Federal Trade Commission for one sentence in literature. Now, this is 1,200 physicians, 1,200 physicians of all ages, medical doctors, all, and we were getting 200 to 300 new members every year. So we were growing exponentially. We had $1 million US in the bank, which in the mid-90s was a lot of money. We were having quite an impact.
And just briefly, what was your aim? What was Bruce? What was the aim of this group that you were doing in America, drawing these doctors?
The American, yeah. There's a bit of a delay. I can see that. It's called the American College for the Advancement of Medicine, ACAM. It started in the '60s, and it was with some real old timers who had really been indoctrinated in natural medicines and diet and exercise and detoxification and all the things that I guess we found out that we were hated for. These are integrative doctors. We used to call ourselves holistic, then it went to complementary alternative medicine, then it went to integrative functional medicine. And anyway, so we were attacked by the FTC, and it turned out that the FTC chairman, the year before we were attacked by them, and we were told basically that you're under now surveillance by the government. The year before, the chairman had been on stage at the annual meeting of the Federation of State Medical Boards. And so I was told by the chairman of our board that, you know, the Federation had declined 26 of our proposals for us to become experts testimony to their new study they were going to do on CAM medicine. And then I got attacked by my medical board in Florida, and I didn't think anything of that. And then I got attacked by my medical board in Florida for basically marching a bunch of people on the medical board who were trying to shut down functional medicine in Florida. And at that meeting, as I was leaving, I heard one of the board members, doctors, say to the other one, "Hey, I'll see you at the Federation meeting next week in Dallas." And I put the two and two together, and I went, Federation, what is this Federation? I actually signed up. You could sign up, and I went there as a member to get, you know, you even got continuing educational credits. And I sat for 2 or 3 days in this 5-star restaurant, 5-star hotel, where they were giving out all kinds of things to people. They were wining and dining the members of the state medical board that were all gathered together on this annual meeting. So members of the medical boards go to these meetings. They have delegates, which I saw, that at the last day, they have voted on this big screen. Back in mid-90s was very, you know, high-end technology, I must say. And here, and there's little booths. Each of these delegates was voting with a little electronic voting, yes or no, on these proposals that had been built the year before or over the year by this federation, which turned out to be 2 massive 2-story buildings in Euless, Texas. And so I was stunned. I said, look, who are these people? And I started investigating, and I went actually the next year to the next annual meeting in Dallas and saw the same thing. this indoctrination of the medical boards, councils, in the state council in the United States. And they all seem very, very familiar with this federation. And it turns out that the federation was actually created in 1912. Now, 1912 is a long way back, and it was the time when Rockefeller and associates were entering this allopathic medicine into what was to a large degree, homeopathy and all different types of natural therapies. And it was the time when Flexner was appointed by Andrew Carnegie to study these other colleges, and basically it ended up being that they were kind of wiped out by this whole thing. So basically I find out that most doctors do not know that their medical license, their livelihood is contingent upon their medical boards kind of getting indoctrinated and trained and counseled by this federation, of which nobody really knows how they're truly funded. They also, by the way, are intimately involved in the national medical boards. So all along, the questions and the direction of the medical training to pass the national medical boards has been under the tutelage, if you will, under the control of this private organization. So it's astonishing to me that we still, my goal now is to try to bring these people out of the shadow and let people see what is going on with them.
It's an extraordinary answer because there's so much to unpack there. I am going to go back to something you said earlier. There was one line in something that your group wrote that drew the attention of the medical punishers, I'm going to call them. What was that one line, Bruce, that drew you to their attention?
We were involved in a lot of different areas, but one of the areas we were known for was EDTA, chelation therapy. And one of the lines said basically that EDTA chelation therapy had shown effective results with cardiovascular disease, which of course, after doing thousands, I can attest that that's true.
Yes.
And so it's really been a real tour de force for me. I know that they've been tracking me too, and that's because I got a call from my Hawaii license people that were saying basically that I forgot to tick one little box 15 years earlier, that I didn't know I was going to get a disciplinary attack. So how could this lawyer have known 15 years later, one tick box? They definitely have been following me. So I don't want to sound like I'm being paranoid, but it's true.
I'm not in the medical profession, obviously, but from the outside, this has looked very much like a mafiosa organization. And that is my opinion, not your opinions. But the way it runs seems to be a hierarchical structure of bullying of our doctors. And this is why I ask everybody who is involved in the medical fraternity around the world, please share this interview everywhere. Many doctors, when Bruce and I, Dr. Mary, first put out that interview on the Federation of State Medical Boards, in 2022, many contacted and said, I had no idea my medical council was ruled from Euless, Texas, by this secretive, private organization. And as he said there, Mary, nobody really knows who funds it. So when did you first come across the FSMB, the Federation of State Medical Boards, and why are you wanting to stand up to their iron hand that rules over doctors around the world, Mary?
Yeah, I think I was vaguely aware of FSMB prior to the pandemic, but like many big institutions, I just sort of thought, I didn't really think much of them, like the FDA and the CDC, like they just weren't a part of anything I had to worry about. But I got 4 complaints from the Texas Medical Board. 3 of them were about ivermectin. One of them was because I resigned from a hospital after they publicly attacked me. And they all basically came at the same time. And my complaints also coincided with complaints that came to other doctors all across the country at the same time. It was the fall of 2021. So it seemed the timing struck me as odd, right? They're all coming at the same time. And then when you look at the timeline of events, it coincided with right after Biden mandating the shots. Rachel Levine from HHS had actually come and talked to FSMB that summer. And also the Surgeon General was talking about misinformation. And so there was this heightened scrutiny of doctors across the country who were not complying with, what the government wanted us to do. And so, yeah, and that's when I started digging into FSMB. It turns out they're a private entity that somehow has control over all state medical boards. And it really doesn't make sense to me. So our lawsuit is trying to, expose them. And it's to protect free speech of physicians, because that's what they're trying to silence us. You're not allowed to have a dissenting opinion. And they've become very political, as we saw during the pandemic.
It's really even more than that. You're also, through this, trying to protect something sacred, which is the doctor-patient relationship, are you not, Mary? Why should this outside body dictate to doctors what they can and cannot tell their patients, discuss with their patients, and give to their patients in terms of treatments?
Right. I mean, two of the plaintiffs in our lawsuit lost their licenses because they wrote vaccine exemptions for patients they knew who had legitimate concerns. And both physicians had just years of experience. It's not like, they're entitled to their medical opinion, but basically because they, the heinous crime of writing, and it wasn't a lot of exemptions. Dr. Sutton was 8 exemptions, and Dr. Hummiston was 16 exemptions, and they lost their license. The other plaintiff in this lawsuit lost his license because he wrote an email to his patients cautioning them not to get the shots right away, give it time, see where everything pans out, which is a very reasonable thing to do. And he lost his license. And in my situation, I testified in court, and that was what they went after me for. So it was a patient trying to get ivermectin, and the wife was suing. He was hospitalized. He was considered terminal. They were talking hospice. The wife sued because the hospital refused to let him try ivermectin. And it was my testimony during that lawsuit which prompted the hospital to turn me into the medical board.
Wow.
That's
unbelievable.
It's such a breach of everything that medicine is meant to be about. So just before we go to your story, Dr. Bruce, I do want to hear how you've been treated by the New Zealand Medical Board. But Mary, who are the other 3 plaintiffs, these brave doctors who are willing to take on this megalith?
It's Dr. Kelly Sutton, and she lost her license over writing 8 vaccine exemptions. Dr. John Hummiston, he lost his license for writing 16 vaccine exemptions. And Dr. Mark Brody, who lost his license for writing an email to his patients telling them not to get the COVID shots.
And you at the moment are putting out a series of interviews. I'd like to follow up with these with other interviews as well. But a series of interviews with these doctors and others to highlight the court case, aren't you, Mary? Where are they going up? Where can people follow your interviews best?
Yeah, I just did one with Dr. Sutton, and you can see them on X, you can see them on YouTube, you can see them on my Substack, you can see them on Rumble.
I love your X handle is MD Breathe, isn't it?
Yes.
Breathe. It's wonderful. It's the key thing to staying alive. Dr. Bruce, what is your story of the dealings with the New Zealand Medical Council, which we need to dig into, is absolutely ruled and directed from Euless, Texas by the FSMB. All medical councils and boards around the world are actually directed by the FSMB, are they not, Dr. Bruce?
Well, it's interesting. You would say, well, okay, so here I am in New Zealand, and this is obviously not one of the U.S. medical states. It's not a state and medical board or anything. So how is it possible that the Federation of State Medical Boards could have an impact on me here? Well, that's a very interesting story that needs to be told. Because in 1993, and I have great pictures of this, of the doctors sitting around the table doing their doctor thing, which is really important. Medical boards and medical councils of doctors who are really looking at, is there any harm out there? Are there any doctors who are, alcoholics or drug addicts or, sexually abusing? All of these things are really important. And that's where medical councils and boards should be. They should be really protecting the public from harm and making sure that the doctors are trained up and doing their, staying on board with all the updates. That's what medical councils and boards do, right? Wrong. Now no patients are getting harmed. I have not, of all of this has been going on, I have never seen any. In fact, I had a bunch of patients come to the, writing letters and all kinds of things. And this is the standard. So what happened in 1993? In 1993, the Medical Council of New Zealand, along with the Canadian Council, the Australian Council, and this is a dog here. This is Charlie. Charlie King. Medical Council were invited by the Federation to come up and flown up, by the way, all expenses paid, to San Francisco's annual meeting in 1993. And there, the Federation said to these four countries, and New Zealand, let's form an international association. And they all said, oh, good idea. And so the next year in 1994, they were all flown into Washington, D.C., where they formed the International Association of Medical Regulatory Agency, IAMRA. Now, IAMRA now has grown to, I think, something like 45, maybe 50 countries, maybe even 70, I have to keep track, around the world. Guess where the address of IAMRA is? In the same as the Federation in Euless, Texas. Same address. The board of directors last year on IAMRA, the chairman of the board was our CEO, Joan Simeon, of the New Zealand Medical Council. She's a non-doctor. She was paid for 2 years before she became chair. So pre-chair, she was paid by the Federation. 2 years while she was chair, and she'll get 1 year post-chair. So 5 years, these people are on the payroll in addition to what they're making from their medical council that they come from. And this is really a concern because she's the chairperson of IAMRA. Guess who the ongoing secretary is of IAMRA? Dr. Chaudhry, who is the president of the Federation. So the president of the Federation of State Medical Board sits on the International Association at the same address and as a secretary, giving input. So this is a very, very serious problem. This is how they've been able to control it on a worldwide basis, not just state by state.
And you can see, Mary, can't you? It's all about setting up these gradations of power, these hierarchies of power, so that, I'll put it this way. When I was first interviewing Dr. Bruce on the FSMB, what struck me most was this, that the FSMB seems to be the enforcement arm of big pharmaceuticals, policies and products. Do you think that's too long a bow to draw, Dr. Mary?
No, I think they're also in bed with our government. As I said earlier, HHS was definitely connected with them during the height of the pandemic and seemed to be directing their message. People may not know this, but our Biden doled out $11.5 billion to social media influencers, groups, nonprofits, sports teams, you name it. It started off as a couple hundred and it grew to thousands of organizations just funneling money to spread the safe and effective narrative. And I'm sure FSMB was part of that effort. And like Bruce said, I mean, the role of these medical boards is to protect the public from, really wayward doctors that, typically they go after doctors that are, showing up drunk at work or drug addicts or sexual predators, that sort of thing. That's the role of the medical board. It's not to go after doctors who have alternative views on medicine, but that's what they became during the pandemic.
So if we then dig in where we should always begin, you mentioned this, Dr. Bruce, who funds this? Where is this money coming from? For example, for these giant knees up, these international get-togethers, it must cost a fortune. Who's behind it, as far as you can tell, Bruce?
Well, they have a foundation, and they don't have to. The foundation is a 501c3, and I don't think they have to show. They also, by the way, they actually have an office in Washington, D.C. for their lobby arm. So not only do they have 300 or 400 staff in these buildings in Euless, Texas, stuck back, by the way, it's a great picture, an aerial I have, stuck back in this development of homes. Way back, they're just hiding away these two massive buildings, two-story buildings with 300 employees. And inside information for me is that they're constantly monitoring the world's media to see what doctors may be getting out of line and speaking, things against the narrative. And then they basically, they'll phone in and give a little bit of a call to that doctor's governing body, who controls his or her livelihood. This is the thing. I mean, it's not like it's a bludgeoning tool. It's a bludgeoning tool. There's no question about that, like you were saying. It's and it's also really meant to send signals to the doctors: stay in line, boy or girl, or this is what's going to happen to you. Look what happened to this Dr. Bruce. Look what happened. By the way, to answer your question, I basically live in a very rural area, stuck back. You've been here, so Golden Bay is beautiful spot on the top of the South Island in New Zealand. And we have a big mountain between us and the nearest hospital. So when this thing was rolling out, I was paying attention to FLCC and Corey and these guys, and they were coming up with ivermectin. And so I said, we need to get some ivermectin here. I don't want these people dying all over me. I might as well. So I basically legally had a compounding pharmacy make up ivermectin. I didn't buy overseas, make up ivermectin. And I dispensed ivermectin to my patients, none of whom had to go to hospital. All of them got through the COVID thing very quickly. I never made a statement that said, don't get the shot. I never said that. And of course, we have a little local paper, and I said in there, listen, if you're in good shape and good nick and you're taking vitamin D and you're doing fluids and you're in good shape, this will be like a bad flu and you'll go through it. Basically calming everybody down from this hysteria that was rolling across the country. It's interesting. I got one of the reasons I got pulled in is in our tiny little newspaper. I sent an open letter to the woman who was in charge of alarming the public about cases. There's cases here, there's cases there, and all these cases that were coming in. So I wrote an open letter to her, and I said, my patients and I would like to know exactly what a case is. And basically that got me in trouble too. That was another thing. How dare you ask that question? Well, she wrote back. She said, basically, I don't know what a case is. You have to talk to the Ministry of Health. So she's basically doesn't even know what a case is, but she's spouting it out and telling people where there's 11 cases here and driving the whole chaos that was happening at the time. So I basically was doing everything in my power to do the best for my patients, and never said a negative against vaccination. And I've lost my license because of that, because of ivermectin. And I'm legally allowed to prescribe off-label ivermectin and dispense it. There you go.
It's absolutely shocking. We have lost the best of our doctors in New Zealand because of this sort of bullying. How many years practice are you now, Bruce? How many years have you been a doctor?
Oh, 45.
All of that experience. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of hours of fine medical practice have been lost through this. What is really, Mary, just a system of bullying. If you do not conform, if you question, if you do anything we tell you not to do, we will punish you to the maximum that we can. If you do what we want you to do, we'll possibly give you emoluments, we'll fly you to a knees up, we'll help you to have lots of money, coming your way and success coming your way by being in with the FSMB. This surely, Mary, this case is going to expose, well, for me, the first issue is a massive corruption and breakdown of the medical honesty, of the medical system. The whole thing depends on honesty with our doctors. Mine to you as my doctor and yours to me. So what do you think the main issues are that will come out of this case, Mary?
Well, yeah, it is a monumental task to fight back. What I discussed, I didn't realize this when I chose to fight back, because I could have made it all go away if I had just paid them $5,000 and took 8 hours of CME and retook the jurisprudence exam. But I decided to fight, and that fight has cost me over $250,000. It's been 4 years, and there was no patient harmed at all. In the patients, I haven't had a patient complain. So I want to expose that, and the fact that if you do choose to fight, it's a huge deal. It's a huge battle. And it's, we have not even reached the judicial branch. We're still in the executive branch. And so when you are fighting in the executive branch, it's nearly impossible to win, which I didn't realize that going in. The other thing, we've got this private entity.
Just explain that statement, in the executive branch. So, what are you meaning by that?
Well, so the medical board is an arm of the executive branch of Texas, the Texas Medical Board. And when I chose to challenge them, the first step was go to the administrative state the administrative court, the state, they call it the State Office of Administrative Hearings, which is different from the judicial system. Administrative courts are controlled by the executive branch, and historically they're not in favor of the defendant in most cases. 90% of the time, the court the state wins, the executive branch wins. So it has been a long, drawn out battle just to get beyond that. I'm still not beyond that. We're having a hearing on December 12th. The final hearing in this process, I thought I was done last month, but they didn't let my lawyers into the meeting. So that whole hearing was void. They issued me a public reprimand. So we're having a rehearing on December 12th. And then I will go to the judicial system where I have more hope there. But so if you do choose to fight, it is a huge, expensive, drawn out battle. The other thing, I just don't think doctors realize what the FSMB really does, but they collect tons of money through USMLE exams. So they control the licensing exams for doctors. So when you are in residency, you take these USMLE 1 and 2 during residency, and you have to pass them, and how you score helps determine where you're going to do your residency. All of that is controlled by FSMB. They also they control the tracking system for doctors, credentialing system. So when you are applying for hospitals, you have to go through this centralized credentialing system that they control. But that generates a ton of money. It's a ton of money that the states could be making, the state governments could be making. But they have let FSMB take control of that. And that they wield a lot of power on state medical boards, because if state medical boards buck them, then they lose access to these key important features. And they'd be out of, it would be a major wrench in trying to credential and license doctors in their state if they broke free from FSMB.
Such disinterest.
I agree.
Yeah, what were you going to say, Bruce?
I agree. It's totally what they've done is they've since 1912, which was before, by the way, any of the government agencies, before the FTC, FDA, before the CDC, before they were embedding themselves as these came on board, and certainly embedding themselves with the medical councils, medical boards of the states, doing exactly what Mary said, which is, hey, listen, we'll take over this burden from you. We'll give you a break on this, and we'll just have the meetings. By the way, the international arm last year, they had their meeting, which New Zealand attended, of course, in Bali at a 5-star Balinese hotel on the beach. So this is the kind of seduction that they do and have done over the years, and they've just inculcated themselves so deeply into the system that it's almost impossible to untangle them and really realize that this is a private organization. By the way, the medical councils of the world, medical boards of the world, if you get a disciplinary hit, it's disseminated through the federation and all the other medical boards in the different countries, so that you basically blackball. Mm-hmm. Also, the federation has and owns the disciplinary data bank. The disciplinary data bank is if you get any discipline mark against you, it goes into this bank, unexpungible, it's permanent. And if you try to get a license in some other state, they all go through and make an inquiry into that disciplinary data bank. And if they see that you've got a black mark, basically that's it. You don't get a license. So not only have they been able to they figured out a way to keep, in your particular state, because it's state by state in the United States, but they've been able to blackball you from all the states.
Incredible. So just back to that, Mary, 250,000 you mentioned it's cost you so far. I'm right here. We need to say, can people who are watching this donate to help you with this seminal case, which is, if we think of it like the Wizard of Oz film, you're really pulling back the curtain to see who the wizard is, controlling all of the pieces, aren't you? That's what this important legal case is doing.
Yeah, I am fighting on principle. I'm fighting to expose the tyrants, and supporting me. The best way is if you subscribe to me on Substack or on X. It not only does it help me offset the legal fees, but it increases my reach if I have more subscribers. And that's what I'm trying to do, is increase my reach so I can expose them.
And you're getting around 1 million a day already. So if people who are watching this can send it to all of your contacts, Mary gets a massive reach. And at that point, I know somebody took me aside here in New Zealand and said, at a certain point, Liz, they become reluctant to come after you at a certain point of support. So that is also crucial. Now, back to my earlier question to you, Bruce. This is a private organization. You just mentioned that in your last answer. How are they funded? Do we have any idea of who's behind this? Because it will be the same group who will try to take down this court case. What has your research yielded?
Well, it's interesting that when I went to the 2 annual meetings, there was an exhibition off in the corner that had a drug company. I think it was Merck. And I heard and I overheard saying, basically, get that out of here, get it out of here. Like, oh, you're not supposed to show any kind of connection between the pharmaceutical industry and this bludgeon arm. But if you think about it, listen, it makes perfect sense. Rockefeller and those guys, they were pretty smart, and they were dealing with these doctors who had been cross-trained back then in homeopathy and all these other things. They had a pluripotential knowledge of the healing arts. And all of a sudden they're kind of told, basically allopathic, these are petroleum-based new drugs coming in. And basically they must have said, how can we basically keep these doctors in line and towing the line to be our drug pushers? Basically, that's the deal. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, guys, now that I've been struck off, I can say we are just glorified drug pushers for the medical industrial complex. And if you step outside of that and you do non-prescribed, non-patentable, natural things, and you're talking about others. By the way, vitamin D, one of the most amazing, it's a hormone, is so powerful, but you see this kind of constant suppression in the media about the power and the effect of vitamin D, which I espouse totally. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I tend to ramble, but
not at all. But in terms of the founding of it, it definitely looks like Rockefeller money. And I want to pick up a point there, Bruce, that you mentioned to me in our first interview on the FSMB, which is prior to the establishment of the Federation of State Medical Boards, there was about 50-50 medical schools that were more based around herbs and homeopathy and different perspectives on making people healthy. After it was established in 1912 or 1913. What was the makeup of the medical schools?
I
think you said that there was a Rockefeller representative on every medical school board after establishment. So
after Flexner's report pretty much wiped out competition, which it was just basically wiped out the competition. Then, as I understand it, my research shows that every single allopathic medical school, which I think there was like 150, and there really hasn't been that many more added in over the last 100 years, interestingly. But every board of every medical allopathic medical school had to have a Rockefeller representative on it, pointed to it, to keep an eye on things.
It's pointing to big money behind this FSMB, Mary. Have you got any idea of who's going to be your big resistor in this court case? Who'll be behind the pushback?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was just thinking, when I get off of this, I'm going to really dig into their financials. I bet we could research that pretty well and do a timeline back, start at 1912, look at, because they're, I'm sure that they, like most nonprofits, they have a way of hiding things. But that is a project I intend to embark on.
Let's ask Candace Owens-Stiles. The way she's doing her journalism is asking for all of the people who are supporting her, watching her, to do research as well and send you links. Certainly, my address is liz.gunn@freenz.org if you want to send any information that might help Mary. Mary, would you be willing to put your address up here for people to contact you if they have useful hints, or perhaps we could put it in the post edit, where she actually opened a specific chat for people to send information. And here I would ask anybody working with the FSMB in Euless, Texas, if you want to whistleblow confidentially, you could contact either one of us, because you really could do with the world's help on this case, Mary.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. I mean, probably easiest now is leave a comment on X, but I do have a website, drmarytalleybowden.com. It's a little bit fresh. I need to get it better organized, but that's also a place that you could leave a message.
And let's get all of our people who love researching, seeing what you can find out when you follow the money. The main rule of any good journalism is always follow the money and find out who's behind it. Back to the court case then, I asked you what you think the main issues are. What is the approach you're thinking of taking? Is it to tell the stories of these persecuted doctors, yourselves and hundreds of others of our finest doctors around the world, particularly in the West, who had the courage to stand up and paid the price of standing up? Are you going to tell their stories in court, or how will you approach it all to prove the sort of bullying modus operandi of the FSMB, Mary?
Well, our goal, of course, is to get to discovery. That would be very exciting. We also want more doctors to join the lawsuit. So we can have more doctors join. If you were disciplined by your medical board over, issuing a second opinion, testimony you made in court, something you said on social media, where the focus is free speech, and you do have to have been disciplined by the board. But yeah, if we get more doctors on the case, that would be great. It
would be wonderful, Bruce, wouldn't it, to get a tsunami?
May I also say that because we can make this direct connection between the international arm of the Federation, I think, Mary, and I think we talked about this on the last thing, I think that it's certainly reasonable to suggest that any international doctor outside the United States who has been disciplined by their medical board for the reasons you said, also should be able to join in. Is that correct? If we were to join in IAMRA?
That I don't know. We'd have to talk to our attorney to see if that works on an international basis. I'm not sure.
You might have to. That's always an interesting one, isn't it? When it's out of the immediate geographical location. However, that would be a good one to follow through. And I still think if people could send your links, your stories, if you have been a doctor who's been persecuted through your medical board, please send that to me if you're outside America, liz.gunn@freenz.org. And I can compile those stories, Mary, while we find out how wide this really could go. But as far as the feedback that you're getting on the interviews you've been putting out, are the public responding to this? Because my impression is many of the public have no idea how controlled from above our doctors have been for all these decades, Mary.
Yeah, I don't think most people know what the FSMB is. It's not like the AMA or the CDC. People have never heard of it. So yeah, we are working hard to educate people on what that is and what kind of impact they've had on doctors across the country.
Bruce, what would you like to see with the FSMB, given that you've lost, your career could have gone on for another decade easily, given your mental acuity and your experience as a doctor and your commitment to your patient's health? It's an absolute travesty that you've lost your practicing ability. But what would you like to see with this group, the really head of the snake, the FSMB?
Well, actually, I'm actually kind of glad. I feel like I've really been broken free here now, and I do a lot of what I do. Doctors go through this 4 years of indoctrination in medical school, and they really don't learn anything about natural therapy. They really don't know anything about diet, nutrition. I mean, really, literally, they are completely closed off that. I had to retrain myself over the last 15, 20, 30 years. And so I can act as a naturopathic doctor and continue to help people. I just don't have the privilege of writing that wonderful prescription for that we're all supposed to be so glad to be able to do. What I want to see is, and I hope there's a group that's now up there in the governmental positions. I'm holding optimism with the group that's in there now and HHS, is that they will begin to say, we're going to take away the control that the Federation has and what what we should be doing, which is making sure it's quality medicine going out there, but to give the doctors the right to be able to have their own opinion and to be able to counsel patients without feeling that they're being overwatched, overseen, and that their livelihoods are in trouble. And I want to thank you, Mary. Mary. I want to thank you so much too, Liz, for giving me the opportunity, 4 years now ago, where we sat down by the fireplace up in near Auckland, and I exposed this because it's really, I think it's created a situation where there's a snowballing effect that's happening, and I hope it really gathers momentum now with this extra shot that we're giving it with this interview. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And Bruce and I were talking earlier today, Mary, as somebody who was in mainstream media, now legacy media journalism 20 years ago, I think the same pressures are happening to our younger journalists. A young one told me she was in a control room in a TV station, and she just mentioned that she was going home to watch a Russell Brand interview, and the whole control room went quiet. They all turned to her and said, "You better be careful what you're watching."
Wow.
So I want to move on to this nonsense of misinformation and disinformation. And she has ended up leaving journalism for that very reason. So we've got journalists who are too scared to go against the herd mentality where they work. We've got doctors, definitely in hospitals, too scared to speak out and say, I'm seeing a lot of patients who are jabbed in hospital now with the mRNA jab, and they are showing symptoms I've never seen before. People under 40 with serious heart conditions we've never seen before. Come on, guys, what's going on? Instead of speaking up, they're so intimidated, aren't they, Mary?
Yeah, it's disappointing, but it's not surprising. I mean, they went after me to set an example. They went after other doctors to set an example. Like, this is what happens if you speak out. When Houston Methodist went after me, I really didn't have much of a following on Twitter. I was very, much more conservative about what I said compared to what I'll say now. I said things like ivermectin works and vaccine mandates are wrong. And they just sought to destroy me. I mean, they went to the Houston Chronicle and told them I lost my privileges. That's how I found out I lost my privileges, from a text message from a reporter telling me that they had suspended my privileges. And then next thing I know, CNN, Washington Post, they were reporting on it. NBC, I had people screaming at me from Australia, calling me all sorts of horrible names. I mean, it just went viral. And that was very purposeful to, set an example and show everybody, okay, this is what happens if you challenge us. And it made me so mad. I just decided to fight back very hard because it was just so absurd what they did.
You're just an inspiration, isn't she, Bruce? I mean, you really are.
She sure is.
Yeah, it's so important. And for people who say, oh, it's all nonsense, the jabs are fine. I did say to Mary, I'm going to read this out actually, just to show one tiny bit of a mountain now of evidence against the mRNA. I was sent this just before we came to air, and it's a New Zealand official information application, which is like your FOIA. And I have the number here if people want the reference. But the question was, I want to know the number of people under the age of 40, under 40-year-old New Zealanders, who are presenting to emergency departments, A&E, throughout New Zealand, hospitals, with chest pain and heart issues. And I want to know year by year. So here are some numbers for people to digest. 2019, there were 2,219 New Zealanders with chest pains and heart issues. 2020, 4,408. 2021, when Jacinda Ardern, our cruelest leader ever, forced the mRNA shots on people here if they wanted to keep their jobs. 2021, it went from 2,000 in 2019 to 13,063 people under 40 with heart palpitations, heart pain, chest pain, and other heart issues. And not palpitations, it says chest pain and heart issues. 2022, it went up to 21,000. 2023 to 20,000 again. 2024, when this question finished, 6 months, it was at 14,329, which tracks to 28,000 for 2024. So we can see evidence there. If anybody is watching this interview and still saying the mRNA is safe, it is not safe. So Mary, you are vindicated, absolutely, by your pushback and by your asking questions. The real question now is, will other doctors who know the truth reach out to you and support your case? How would that help if many other doctors who've gone along with it now also reached to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not optimistic about that happening at all, unfortunately. Doctors are naturally a little bit timid to begin with, because, you know, you're training, you have to make straight A's. You have to be well liked to even get into medical school. So you have to be sort of a compliant person to begin with. And then that just gets reinforced during your training. I mean, I've never been in the military, but I imagine they're similar. You don't deviate outside the lanes during your training. You kind of get beaten down and beaten into submission during your training. And so it breeds conformity, and that's how we come out of our training is, learn to submit.
I'm 100% in agreement with you, Mary. I watched it. I graduated, in 1980, so a bit year, but I looked around and I went to Thomas Jefferson University, one of the oldest in the country, in Philadelphia. We had 230 students in our, this is a huge class. And I began to say to myself, my God, I'm having a hard time really relating to a lot of these people. They just, they want to stay in their room all night long and study. They get a high mark on their test. And I was like, wait, why? Why do you need to get the highest in the credits? Just pass the test and become a doctor and come out with me and do some golfing or something else. No. So I don't have a lot of doctor friends. Actually.
Be a balanced human being. Yeah. But I want to ask each of you, what gave you, Mary, the fortitude? I mean, the willingness to take this on and fight back. What was different about you?
Well, I am more independent minded than a lot of people. But I was seeing everything firsthand. I mean, I was experiencing it. And maybe if that hadn't been the case, I would have been one of those doctors that just went along. But I was seeing it all firsthand. I was seeing that the shots weren't working at all. And then I started seeing the harms. I mean, I still see people injured from the shots almost daily in my office. I'm constantly reminded of it. And then, my practice is set up where, I mean, the only people I answer to are my patients. I call myself third party free because I'm not contracted with the government or insurance companies or hospitals. I mean, the buck stops with me, and that makes a big difference as a doctor. It was being in that setup and seeing everything firsthand, made it easy for me to take the position I did.
And you, Bruce, what made you willing to speak out when really a lot of people in New Zealand were very frightened by Ardern and her bullying of New Zealanders at the height of the pandemic? You spoke out.
I kind of lived my life in the wondering during when I finally pass on and do my life review, which I believe, am I going to like the way I responded to this or that or whatever? And basically, that's the way I gear my life. It's like I can't be worried about whether I'm going to be destitute or any of that kind of stuff. Something will happen. So I'll move on, but at least I'll have the knowledge that and the self-worth that I did what I felt was right, and I just didn't do it because I was afraid or scared, and stayed in line. So I'm maybe this is Scottish in me, I don't know.
It's a beautiful response, and it's the one that I would offer to any doctors who are wavering, who've seen, as Mary has, the horrors of these jabs and wanting to do the right thing before you retire, before you die, before you have to review your life path, and realizing money isn't worth selling your soul. I do ask you to get in touch with me or Mary and support this case. Mary, this misinformation and disinformation is just ridiculous. It was rolled out first, I think, by Jacinda Ardern at the United Nations. And Dan Bongino actually did a statement at the time. He's now the second to Kash Patel. But he did a statement saying this woman is a horror. This woman is an absolute horror and should not be talking like this. This is fascist language. There is no such thing, to my mind, as mis or disinformation. There is only information, some of which I will agree with, some of which I'll be unsure about in research, and some of which I will dismiss, but others won't. So perhaps I'd like your view on what you feel when you hear those words, mis and disinformation. What's your reaction?
Yeah, it's sort of a trigger word for me, because that's what Houston Methodists accused me of. They accused me of spreading dangerous misinformation. So I named my book Dangerous Misinformation. It comes out in May. But yeah, it's interesting when you think of it. So 20 years ago, and Bruce, you can attest to this, patients didn't have access to the kind of information they have access to now. the doctors held all the information because we didn't have the internet. So unless you had a bunch of textbooks as a patient, you were really reliant on your doctor to feed you the information. And now it's entirely different. Patients have access, and a lot of times they have more time than their doctors to dig into issues. So this whole misinformation thing is absolutely ridiculous. The science is never settled. I learn things from my patients, and I enjoy that. Like they bring things to my attention that I haven't seen, and I go research it because we're always learning new things.
Well, I know, talking about broadcasting, the first and only time that I know that the Federation ever came out publicly was in April of 2021 with the statement that said basically doctors who spread misinformation and disinformation are subject to having disciplinary action. That was the battle. That was the signal to the hospitals, to the medical councils. All right, guys, go after them. And then in many cases, we found that there's people, in my case, actually, I was turned in by a local medical group here, not by patients. That's who dobbed me in, that they call dobbed in. And one guy that lived in Christchurch, who's not even a patient, I don't even know him. This guy shows up that he makes a complaint to the medical council about me. He's not even my patient. So who's that? So yeah, so this was all obviously very, if you look at it forensically, was very structured, and it was the Federation that set the starting gun, came out with that announcement. Which have you seen that, by the way, that announcement?
No, what is that? What is that?
Yeah, no, we have it on writing. They issued out a letter to all the state medical boards, encouraging them to go after doctors who spread quote unquote misinformation. And the Surgeon General issued a battle cry about that too, that doctors spreading misinformation should be disciplined.
I'd like to see that. There is no such thing. It's saying there is only one truth, which is the very thing Jacinda Ardern said to all New Zealanders. We are your one source of truth. And thankfully, enough New Zealanders woke up at that point to be able to say, there's something wrong with this Prime Minister. There's something evil here. This is not normal. A government saying to its people, we are your one source of truth, is George Orwell's book, 1984. Speaking of books, Mary, what if you said for Christmas, people could buy and book and pay for an advance copy of your book? So, for example, if I wanted to give that to friends, I could pay you now, and I know that the book will be coming in May. But that would be a Christmas present I would give a few people if you were able to set it up now, and it would also give you some money up front when you are facing this big legal battle. I think millions around the world would do that potentially.
That would be wonderful. If you're willing to wait until May to get your Christmas present, then that would be wonderful.
If you put it up, if you put a link to it in the edit of this interview, I think certainly I'll line up and do it. Would you buy a copy of that book, Bruce? I'd do it just for
you
Mary.
betcha.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Have you actually finished the book, or are you still writing it as you go?
Yes, I have finished it. Another idea is, if you don't want to read the book, maybe send it to some people that should read the book, like Peter Hotez and Paul Offit. You could send the book to them to educate.
I'd send it to every one of my former colleagues in legacy media. Right. So send it to CNN, send it to every front person on MSNBC, and challenge them to read it. But I think to buy it now and book it, and to book it in for mid-May, but we can pay up now. I'd be more than happy to do that. On the misinformation issue, you put up an interview, Mary, that Grok came back and told you in this ridiculous AI Grok language that shocked me that this was misinforming people from a very experienced doctor. Could you tell us about that with Dr. Kelly's interview?
Yeah, I haven't had time to respond to Grok yet, but I do intend to. I tried to post a interview or clip from an interview with Dr. Kelly Sutton, who, as we spoke about earlier, she lost her license for writing 8 medical exemptions. And I kept the system would not let me post this clip. I tried like 10 times. And then I thought, well, maybe there's something wrong with X. I did a test post. It wasn't that. And so I just did a screenshot and directed people to a link to the interview. And then I asked Grok what was up. And they said, well, the system flagged you for misinformation. I couldn't believe it.
And they're trying to say there were certain words in there that were unacceptable. I loved the comments, people saying, This is a machine telling me, the viewer, what is true or not. I, the viewer, wish to decide where truth lies by watching the piece. And a lot of people are pushing back now in comments. We will decide where truth lies. We will each decide it for ourselves. So perhaps your final comments, Bruce, on mis and disinformation. I want to dismiss disinformation as quickly as I can from my worldview. What's your view?
My view is that, well, I'm actually, I read that this morning about the Grok thing with Mary, and I made a comment in there, Mary. Hopefully it went through, basically saying, Elon, what's going on? You spent all this money to open up X, and right, people should be able to say what they want. Freedom of speech wipes out, in my estimation, misinformation and disinformation. It's the freedom of speech. Let the people decide for themselves whether it's information, misinformation. But we're getting into a very serious problem period of time here that I'm very concerned about with what's happening over in Europe with people trying to just speak their mind and getting arrested and all kinds of really 1984 shit. Sorry, is coming out, and it's a very concerning period of time. I mean, this medicine thing that we're talking about is just one arm of the octopus.
Yes. But it's a crucial arm because that's one of the ways they really discombobulated right around the world by doing this medical tyranny. So, Mary, I asked you earlier, what are the other goals? Is it to highlight that in America, freedom of speech is absolutely essential, and the FSMB cannot be used to gag anybody, but particularly our doctors?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important that we succeed in this case, because if we don't, it sets a precedent that free speech of doctors is not protected, that you may not be entitled to a second or third opinion without that doctor getting punished. So, we want to restore the licenses of my 3 co-plaintiffs who lost their licenses. So that's another goal. But if we lose, it has bad consequences.
And it's the same if people join you. If other doctors who've been punished join in, that will be one of the goals, to get their licenses restored, which I think many of us would want to see. And not just across America, but Bruce, as you say, potentially around the globe through this international arm. Meantime, has there been any response, Mary, from the FSMB to your putting up these posts, or your pushing back?
Not to my knowledge, not yet.
I wonder how high in the administration you've been able to go. Have you been able to contact Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or Dr. Jay Bhattacharya or anybody? I did speak to Dr. Kirk Milhone, who's now on the advisory committee of the CDC, and he said not only is he an enormous admirer of the work you do and your courage, Mary, but also he would be willing to at least take a look at what you're doing, which is a real step forward.
Maybe we don't talk strategy.
No, but it's good to know. It's good to know if we can get support at the upper levels of the administration. I think less than strategy, it's more an appeal to Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, to RFKJ from me, if you would listen to this interview, if you would give Mary support. But perhaps also your vision for it, Mary. How big do you think this will go in America? Do you feel it will really take off as a tsunami of doctors supporting you?
Well, that would be nice. But as I said earlier, doctors are a different breed. They tend not to be as courageous as we'd like. But, even if it's still important, even if it doesn't make a big splash, in terms of, HHS helping us. Yeah, I can see how it might be difficult for them to get involved, but anybody with a big microphone who wants to spread the word on this, that would be helpful.
And I think whistleblowers are key as well, Bruce. Getting whistleblowers like you were willing to be a whistleblower and say what you knew about the FSMB. If somebody was in the organization and willing to help Mary to say what he or she knows, it would make a terrific difference, wouldn't it?
Yes, I totally agree. And again, the more we can make people aware of this 110-year-old organization, I guess, and the power that they have been able to wiggle themselves into, places of power that they've been able to wiggle themselves into to basically control medicine and the way medicine or healing is actually disseminated, I think it's important. We just get the word out.
So I want to finish this interview with your vision. I did do this as a follow-up when we originally spoke 4 years ago, Bruce, your vision for medicine. And you talked about lots of different well-researched options that are beyond allopathic, beyond oil-based, pharmaceutical-based medicines. You had a vision of a new kind of world where many options are available for doctors to offer their patients. But what's your vision for the structure of medicine and how it could be restructured in a better world, in a less controlled and duplicitous world, Bruce? And then you, Mary.
Well, I'm very pessimistic about allopathic medicine. There's no changing it. I think we need to build a parallel system. In fact, I really think that I think these GPs and other doctors, frontline primary doctors, better start realizing that they may be out of a job soon with AI. They're testing it now all around the world for AI, and so they right now they kind of have that pomposity that I'm a big doctor, and this is what they imbue into you in medical school, that you're so important to a doctor. And I have news for you. I think AI probably can do a better job in many cases for if just prescribing drugs and prescribing into the disease care system is what you want. Well, then AI can handle that. So watch out. My word is watch out, GPs and internists and all the frontline people, because you may not have a job in the next 5 years.
You're not unassailable, but what would you envisage? What kind of structure would you like? Are we talking about decentralization, right back to a local body ruling the local doctors, just making sure they act properly, but none of this giant centralized structure, this sort of octopus with many arms?
That could be one of the visions. I haven't really thought it out, because it's right now it's just a matter of me trying to get back into a new part of my life, which I'm really enjoying, actually. But now I just feel it feels so freeing to be able to just talk now and realize I can't do anything more except maybe send a drone.
Yeah. Well, I do want to address that. You've been heavily fined, haven't you? What sort of fine did they put on you, Dr. Bruce?
We didn't even show up. First of all, I was put through professional conduct committee, where they basically the medical council then passed me on to the professional conduct committee, and they basically had nothing really to say. They just passed me on to what they call the tribunal. This is the pathway here in New Zealand, and my attorney and I didn't even bother showing up at the tribunal. It was just worthless. So not only did they strike me off, but they come back with a $75,000 a fine of 50% of the costs and fines. So this is another bludgeon arm that they've been able to figure out here in New Zealand through the Federation, is somehow feeling that the doctors who are being attacked also have to pay an exorbitant amount of the cost. It's incredible.
And Bruce, do you need help with that, with fundraising for that?
Sorry, could you repeat that? That was completely blanked out.
Do you need help with fundraising for that?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to put out a give, send, go on that. I've got to give, send, go. The real thing is that they don't deserve a penny, really, at the end of the day. So I'll talk more about that later with you.
It is horrendous. There's one of our most ethical, most experienced doctors, Mary, being put through that kind of hell. Does that steel your spine for the fight you're taking on? This is happening around the world. The best of our best doctors being put through that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's such a daunting task to fight them. I mean, you're really kind of left, unless if it hadn't been so egregious, I might have just caved so I could move on with my life. But yeah, it's a battle. I don't think most people realize that unless the board is supposed to protect the public from drug addicts and sex offenders and blatant malpractice, repeated malpractice. They're not supposed to go after doctors for issuing second opinions or offering alternative testimony in court or writing some vaccine exemptions. It's just completely absurd. So yeah, our goal is to really expose what's going on. I don't think most people know.
And finally, your vision. What I asked Bruce earlier, your vision for the kind of medical practice you'd like to run and the kind of structure that would oversee you, if any.
Well, I love my setup. My setup is ideal. My patients pay cash. I don't charge exorbitant fees. It's pretty fair fees, very transparent, everything. They know exactly what everything's going to cost. And there is a growing movement. It's called direct primary and direct specialty care. It's like affordable concierge care. So you just know the prices up front and save your insurance for catastrophic care, the car wreck and the broken leg and, cancer, but pay out of pocket for your routine visits.
And would you like to be able to see doctors with a vast swathe of options to put to their patients, not simply allopathic medicine, to be able to look back at the herbalist traditions, or I don't know, the Chinese acupuncture traditions of 2,000 years old, and others that we seem to ignore right now in our supposed medical health field?
Well, I see patients, there's a big demand for that. And I wasn't trained in that. So I'm always telling them, okay, well, here, you can go here for that. But there's definitely a demand, and it's thanks to all the information that's available online, helps people find different paths in that regard.
And I would end by saying I think it is partly thanks to the vast overreach of the bullying of the organization, the FSMB, and its different arms in different countries, where we've seen our doctors being bullied and people who try other modalities being decried or put down, as I have been, for doing different things. There's a pushback by the public. So ultimately, I think there will be a lot of public support. Mary, to finish, how can people support and get behind this very important case so medical tyranny and bullying can be ended, not just in our own countries, but around the world?
Yeah, I mean, sharing this interview, sharing our interviews. I am posting my interviews, like I said, on X and on my Substack and YouTube, and just spreading the word. That would be super helpful.
Wonderful. Bruce, last word to you as the rebel doctor who's now fully freed to say what you'd think.
I just think you're fantastic, Liz.
I think that goes to
Thank
Mary.
you.
But he's got that real Southern charm, Mary, hasn't he? He really has. And I think also the humor and the lightness is what will come back when our doctors can really enjoy their careers and enjoy what they're doing to help people and not be worried about the people who are, yes, what I would call absolute bullies. The FSMB, the days are numbered, and I wish you well, Mary. We'll keep in touch on this case.
Thank you, Liz.
Amen.